I want personalization.
I want to know what problem of mine you're going to solve, and are you going to make our commercial team more successful?
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Enablement Brew. I'm Carly Lehner.
And I'm Melvina Elsai, and we're so excited you're joining us for yet another episode of Pitch Please. And on today's show, we are joined by Sebastian Rul from Second Nature. So excited to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm really excited about our chat today. And yeah, looking forward to it. Let's do this.
Awesome. So before we begin, what is everyone drinking? What's in everyone's mugs, cups?
I'm using my very first Kath Kidston mug that I ever bought, and I'm drinking tea because
Oh.
it's tea time. It's 10 a.m., so might as well.
Sebastian?
I have Coke Zero today. It's noon in Tel Aviv.
There you
Anyone
go.
want to take a guess what I have here?
Coffee.
Yes.
Coffee.
I've
That's
learned. I
it.
love that mug. That mug is amazing.
Thank you. I need to buy some new ones. We need to have some enablement brew mugs.
I know we always talk about that and we haven't done it yet, but we will.
We have to do it soon. So anyway, Sebastian, welcome. Tell us a little bit about your background. What attracted you to Second Nature? What do you love about it? And then we'll dive in a little bit to what you do, what challenges you solve, and why it's important to have enablement on your side.
Beautiful. Thanks, Melvina, and thanks, Carly, for having me today. So there's not much to know about me. I am Sebastian. I am 32 years old. I'm originally Mexican, and I've been living in Tel Aviv, Israel for 12 years now. Um, what attracted me to Second Nature, I was doing my job research. I was looking forward to change my job. So I was working initially at this e-commerce tech company. And I spoke to our CEO and founder, Ariel, and he said, hey, before we move forward, you want to try out our product. Now, Second Nature's core is to do role plays, but not in the standard way where you'll go to your manager. You actually have an AI persona where you go. I tried it out, and my immediate response was, why is no one doing this? If I was a salesperson anywhere in a company, I would want to try this out to get better every single time. So that was it. It was love at first sight, I think.
Incredible. And tell us a little bit, what's your pitch? How do you pitch Second Nature?
Well, that's a good one. So how do you pitch Second Nature? I think we can start by saying what are the challenges that we see not only in enablement, but in sales organizations in the way that they coach their salespeople. And that typically goes, right? You are rolling out a new product or new messaging, and you get everyone together. Everybody does it, they get certified. But then how do you enforce the practice? How do you make sure that they do not forget what they just learned? And on top of that, it's super difficult to align with frontline managers to enforce that coaching because they're also busy and trying to get their numbers right up. And I think one of the other challenges that we see, revenue and enablement work really, really hard on these curriculums, on training programs, and they really want to see their impact in terms of revenue and also understand what training programs are having the most efficiency or efficacy or impact for sellers, because the ultimate goal is to replicate each of your A players and make everybody in the organization speak the same way, the same language, and being able to pitch the same thing. So that's what Second Nature does. Now, how do we do it? Imagine a world where you don't have to do role plays with your manager. You don't have to go on one-on-ones and get all awkward about it, where your manager is making this persona or the CEO or the CTO, which sometimes it ends up being even a pipeline review. And if you're a sales rep, you walk out, oh, that coaching session wasn't great. We just went over my deals. If you're the frontline manager, you go back to enablement and said, oh, I just did a great coaching session. But how do you track that coaching session? How do you make sure that besides the scorecards that they have, how do you make sure that he actually touched upon all the points that you have built into your sales enablement curriculum for that seller to actually improve and become proficient in the messaging, in the product, in the objections that you've been working so hard? So Jenny, the AI, the technology behind Second Nature, is an AI persona that can be anything and anyone you want her to be. It could be your CIO, your CTO. And what you do is have an interactive conversation. And what we see is most sales enablement tools today enable you to have a monologue, right? You record yourself and then your manager reviews it, but you're not really getting better. Think of us as the batting cage before you go to the game. That's my pitch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's super interesting because that's what you just said is enablement tools allow you to have a monologue. Like that's what we do with the asynchronous role playing, and they're super helpful for like, hey, here's my elevator pitch, and here's how I'd respond to a singular objection. But a true conversation back and forth is really difficult to do in a virtual environment right now. But it sounds like Second Nature is looking to solve that. So because this is on like the cutting edge of sales coaching, like I can imagine that sales reps would feel like they're not being really supported by their manager because they're being told to work with a bot instead for their coaching. Like how do you typically overcome that?
Well, there's two things. I think sales reps more than managers actually love Second Nature, and why we love it, and myself being a sales rep and using this technology, is that safe space. There's no bias also. If your pitch was good or was bad, the AI is not going to judge you. You're not going to get reprimanded. You're not going to leave feeling, oh, I did a terrible job on pitching this. It's going to give you straightforward feedback on what were the talking points that you touched upon. And it's also going to give you areas to improve on your pitch. Now, as a sales rep, how do you replicate, let's say, your 8 players? So you can add a couple snippets or videos of your top performers pitching it better. So you're also learning from one another. And it gives you visibility for enablement on where are the areas that the reps need improvement when you're rolling out these curriculums.
Super interesting. So I always I'm a little bit skeptical of AI present day, and I'll tell you why. Because if I think back at Siri, right? Everyone had Siri on their, like how many of us actually used Siri? Like it would take 10 times for me to repeat, one thing for her to actually understand, right? Alexa has gotten a lot better. Alexa even understands my, my 6-year-old when he requests his special song. Am I right in imagining that this is like a cross between Siri and Alexa, and actually it's a person talking back at you? And to some extent, how much does this AI or Jenny understand actually what it is that we're saying? Are there certain buzzwords that she's going off, or how advanced is the tech?
The tech is really advanced, and you're right. It is like talking to a bot. Her voice is still a bit robotic, but the experience is just as if we're talking on a Zoom conversation, right? What is happening, or how do you make sure that the AI stays on that talk track? And what we do is, let's say, Carly or Melvina, let's take what the example of a good conversation will look like, and that we will take from your playbooks, or we will take it from your script and make those the talking points that the AI has to stick to. Now, you're not going to have a 45-minute full-blown sales conversation. The idea of Second Nature is to have mini bite-sized conversations that have a specific goal. What is that specific goal? Could be overcome the objections. For SDRs, could be book another meeting. For AEs, could be new messaging or value proposition, or certify them on a new product rollout. And based on those talking points, you're going to know, or the AI is going to follow. Now, if you are not following the talk track the way you are supposed to, the AI is going to come back with a hint and say, hey, maybe you should, or it's going to try to come back saying, let's talk about second nature for a second. If I was running a simulation with second nature, she would say, well, I'm doing one-on-one role plays. Why should I go with second nature? If I didn't solve the objection, she would keep touching that. Now, if I ended 12 minutes and I didn't overcome the objection, she would give me at the end the justification of why or what I should do better next time. I hope that I made sense.
Yeah. So one of the things that is really great about AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, is that it eventually can be a really powerful tool. But the downside to it is that it takes a long time to learn. So how much work does an enablement team have to do to train Jenny to be a role play facilitator? And how much work is there in the back end to really get that, fully up to speed?
This is a great question, and this is what we get from enablement all the time, because you guys are unveiling all these programs, all these initiatives, and you're like, oh, another tool that I need to do more work.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to train Jenny.
Yeah, train new hires, and now I got to train Jenny.
Right. So the training Jenny is really, really easy. Let's say we got up the simulation up to speed. We got all the talking points because the company already has all that. So we initially work with you to help build these simulations. Now, once the simulation is ready, what we can do is either take recordings from 3, 4, 5 top performers and train Jenny in different conversation paths, because every sales rep speaks differently about the same things. So the goal is that Jenny has a variation of data sets and conversation sets, so she's able to calculate the scoring according to different talk tracks. And it will continue learning over time. Now, the learning is not automatic. I just want to make that sure. There is a revise button that is kind of a manual process where the sales rep will say, okay, I did touch on this talking point, but I speak about it this way, and he will highlight it and it will be submitted to the machine. And that way the AI is able to improve. So once it's set up, it's really having the sales reps, 3, 4 sales reps, which sometimes are more happy to do that just because it will get their coaching. And the fact that it eliminates having to coordinate with frontline managers, the coaching, and that it falls on their enablement saying, hey, I'm rolling this new training, let's do it. And I don't have to take time from the managers, take time from everyone. And on top of that, seeing how the entire organization is functioning and what is effective also later on in terms of pipeline, I think that is the biggest effect of second nature.
And when you look at the different personas that you sell to, who do you typically go after? Do you actually have those initial conversations with enablement, or do you have the conversations with those sales managers that maybe are feeling overwhelmed, right? They're trying to hit their number. Coaching is a great idea. It's often a nice buzzword that's thrown around, but in reality, there is no time for it. Who's that key persona that you sell to?
For the most part, will be sales enablement always on the initial conversation. Now, obviously, we always need the support of sales ops to come in and say, okay, this is the tool that we effectively want to use during our coaching. So they will join as part of the conversation, or sometimes sales holds the budget and not actually sales enablement. So, but sales enablement is always leading the new initiatives in our conversations.
Yeah. What do you say to someone who maybe comes back and says, look, this sounds really great, but we're a people first company. We want to give people the time. We actually want to have more face time. And actually, by maybe implementing something like this, it's almost changing what we're trying to achieve internally, which is be closer to our AEs, be closer to our reps, have those, conversations. And here you're telling me that, Jenny can replace me. I feel a little bit worried. Do you get that objection coming your way?
Yes. And I don't think second nature is about replacing. It's about enhancing the human experience and giving less work to sales enablement and sales managers. Because the process still exists. Sales enablement still needs to provide the content, build the simulations, understand what is effective. The coaching, as good as AI is, sometimes sales managers and different organizations have different KPIs. Besides an automatic scoring, sometimes you do want to make sure that each of the reps are being certified. So you can have a two-way certification or a two-way passing score saying, okay, the AI gave you an 80. I want to make sure that you're still ready to do that, right? If you have 5 maybe that you're not so sure, you can be them still. So we're not replacing yet the humans. We want them to work with their teams, and we want them to have that experience, because at the end of the day, sales is a human experience, it's a human conversation. So if we're not being trained or the materials are not being done by humans, it will be a really difficult thing to overcome.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I love that question, Malvina, because as we are like becoming virtual in terms of where we're working and working from home, it can feel really isolating. And so you actually do really enjoy those one-on-one times with your manager or your team. And so if we're kind of slowly replacing that with AI, like what does the future of work look like? But I definitely think that there's some interesting things going on. But so who are you typically selling to, Sebastian, in terms of like types of businesses? Is it primarily B2B? Are you looking at B2C? Yeah, like tell us a bit about like your client base.
Right. So there's a mix, right? There's B2B, and we're starting to see a little bit of traction with B2C, because the AI has just so many different ways it can go. You could use it for so many different scenarios. If you ask me where our sweet spot is definitely B2B.
Nice, nice. So, what does the future for Jenny look like?
Well, Jenny has changed in the 7 months that I've been in Second Nature. As any startup, we're growing very rapidly. And initially it was just Jenny. Now she has other personas that have joined her team. Uh, the future of Second Nature, multi-language, is definitely something that is coming on for Second Nature. And I think one of the good things about our technology is that it doesn't need to be separate of our curriculum. It could sit on your source of truth into your LMS, and Second Nature could be an external part of that, where you just click a button and it will drive you to the platform to take that coaching experience. But the source of truth is still the same. What else is there in the future? I don't know. I mean, I think there's so many things that we want to do.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned an interesting part around languages. And I had this conversation actually a few weeks ago that enablement is so well known in the Western world and for everyone who's almost native English. But actually, if you move out and go, I don't know, Central Europe, right? Enablement is still a relatively unknown domain. Mainly
Yep.
it's handled by, HR, right? Like it's HR doing the onboarding, it's HR doing the programs, it's HR, looking at, I don't know, content management tools and any other tools that the organization might be bringing on. So the idea of having Jenny maybe communicate in different languages, I think, that is such a sweet spot because enablement is growing so rapidly and it's now expanding so much past just English speaking predominantly countries.
Yeah, for sure.
And we hear that a lot on also global organizations, right? Where their challenges are around also how do we train salespeople in different countries that are not predominantly English speaking, or we want to launch into Asia. How do you make our sales reps speak Japanese? Or so it is something that is in the roadmap. Is definitely something that Second Nature is planning to do. Yeah.
Awesome.
Interesting. Yeah, we definitely run into that challenge, like as we're starting to expand globally. Like English shouldn't have to be the predominant language for workers globally. So how would we train people as we start that expansion? So really interesting, Sebastian. But thank you so much for joining us on the Enablement Brew. This is like the future of sales coaching is something, we've been talking a lot about, tools that we see very often in the market. But this was our first conversation with a company doing something very like forward thinking and kind of, obviously had Malvina and I thinking a bit of like, hey, what would this look like in the future? So thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thank you for having me. And I really enjoyed meeting you both. And hopefully I'll be back.
Awesome. All right. For everyone tuning in, thank you so much. That's a wrap. We'll see you in a few weeks for our new episode. Bye.
Bye.